Our I can statements are, I can identify real-world situations where there are positive and negative values that combine to make 0. I can use a number line to model an integer addition. For N2, this is an example of what you'll be asked to do on the quiz or the test. The directions will say, using complete sentences, write 2 examples of a real-world situation where a positive and negative value combine to make 0. And I want you to remember that we're talking about opposites here. So I'm going to give you a few examples, and you can use those to brainstorm your own, or you can use the examples I give on the quiz. One example might be, I have $5 and I pay $5. Or, I owed $6 and I earned $6. In both cases, we end up at 0 after we earn or pay back our loans. Another example, the temperature increased 2 degrees and decreased 2 degrees. We would end up at a 0 value as far as the change in temperature. Another example for a board game, I moved forward 3 spaces, I moved backwards 3 spaces. We're at 0 or our starting point. For football, the team lost 2 yards and gained 2 yards. So notice that the words I'm using imply going in an opposite direction, above and below, backwards and forwards, lost and gained. And you want to use the same number, just different directions, so different negative and positive values. N3 is not just about being able to add integers, but being able to model integer addition using the number line. So I'm going to give you a demonstration of how we model using a number line the following examples. The rules are listed above. Whenever we start, we always start at the first number, positive or negative, facing in the positive direction. So our first number here is a 4. So I'm going to start at positive 4 with my arrow facing in the positive direction. Then, anytime I see a negative or subtract sign, I am going to turn around. I'm going to change my arrow to the opposite direction. I see a negative right there, so I am going to change my arrow to face the negative direction. Then, anytime I see a number, I'm going to move forward that many units in whatever direction I'm facing. So after that negative sign, I see a 2 here. So I am going to move forward, and since I'm facing the negative direction, that's 2 spaces forward in the negative direction. Wherever I end up is going to be my final answer. Notice that 2 is the same as the answer that I got in my original number sentence. Another example, my first number is -10. So notice I have an arrow facing in the positive direction because we always start facing positive, even if it's a negative number. I have a positive facing arrow at -10. I don't see any negative signs, so I'm going to jump straight to my number 7, which tells me to move forward in the direction of my arrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces. So my result is -3, my final answer. All right. Now, I want to make something clear. The -2 is in parentheses, and that is not the same as absolute value symbols. -2's absolute value would be 2. Absolute values take whatever number's inside and makes it a positive value, but that is not the same thing as a grouping symbol, parentheses. This just groups the negative and the 2 together. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, we can pretend the parentheses aren't even there because there's nothing to compute inside the parentheses. So I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to start with my first number facing in the positive direction. So I start at -4. I see a negative sign, so I'm going to flip my arrow, and then I'm going to move 2 spaces. So 1, 2. -6 is my final answer for this problem. Go ahead and pause the video and try the next one on your own, then unpause to check your answer. Notice that I started at 9 in the positive direction. I flipped directions because of the negative. I moved 2 spaces, and I landed on positive 7 as my final answer. One of the most important directions that we skipped temporarily is anytime we are finding the sum of more than 2 numbers, you're just going to take it 2 numbers at a time. So I'm going to do what I normally would to add these first 2 numbers together. So I started at positive 8. The negative made me flip in the negative direction. I moved forward 5 spaces and ended at positive 3. So that's the sum of the first 2 numbers. Then I'm going to bring down that last part of the expression, and this is going to be my new sum, and I always want to start over. So it doesn't matter that I was going in the negative direction to get to 3. I'm going to start over at 3 facing the positive direction. And that's probably the most important step when adding more than 2 numbers, so make sure that you always start over facing the positive direction. Then I see a negative sign, so I'm going to go in the negative direction. I'm going to move forward 2 spaces. So my final answer is positive 1. All right, I'm adding the first 2 numbers. You can see my result. I started at negative 7 in the positive direction. I moved forward 12 spaces and landed on number 5 in the positives. For the second step, I started at positive 5 in the positive direction because I always start over facing positive. Then I flipped to the negative direction because of the negative 2. I moved 2 spaces and I landed at positive 3. So positive 3 is my final answer for this problem. Good luck on your homework, your quizzes, and your tests. Remember, you can re-watch this video as many times as you need to for it to make sense to you.